I'm 61 years old. I've been married to the same man for almost 4 decades, and until recently, I believed I had everything figured out: love, loyalty, life. I wasn't one to chase excitement or stir up drama. I liked things simple, predictable. But sometimes life sneaks up behind you, places a hand on your shoulder, and whispers, "Not yet." I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. It all started on a cloudy Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished helping with setup for the retirement luncheon at my husband's company. He'd asked if I could lend a hand since they were short-staffed, and I'd always liked being helpful. The office was buzzing with that strange mix of celebration and quiet sadness. Balloons, fruit platters, and cheap sparkling cider. People making small talk like it was their job. I didn't know many of them, but I smiled anyway. That's just what you do. My husband, Mike, was caught in a conversation with the guest of honor, and I didn't want to interrupt. I figured I'd sneak out and wait in the car. That's when I heard the voice behind me. "Need a ride, Mrs. Callahan?" I turned and saw Nathan, one of Mike's younger coworkers. I remembered him from a couple of Christmas parties. Tall, dark hair always a little messy, like he forgot to brush it but somehow made it work. Maybe mid-30s. He was polite, quick with a joke, but never too forward. The kind of man who blended in until you realized you were looking at him a second too long. "Oh no," I said. "I'm just heading out to the car. I can wait." He raised an eyebrow, glanced at the sky. "Looks like it's about to rain." I parked close. "I don't mind at all." I hesitated. I really did. But my feet were tired, and the sky had turned the color of old bruises. I gave a little nod. His car smelled like peppermint and leather. Clean, but lived in. He turned down the radio as soon as I got in, and we settled into that familiar silence between two people who don't really know what to say. "You helped a lot in there," he said after a moment. Everyone seemed to appreciate it. "Just tried to be useful," I replied, eyes fixed on the windshield. The rain had started to sprinkle, soft at first. Nathan smiled. "That's what people like you do, huh? Always helping. Always in the background." I wasn't sure how to take that. People like me. He looked embarrassed. I didn't mean it badly. Just, I don't think most people even realize how much women like you hold things together. I felt a little breath catch in my throat. No one had said something like that to me in years. Maybe ever. I looked at him more carefully, trying to read his face, but he kept his eyes on the road, steady and calm. "It's funny," I said, half laughing. "Sometimes it feels like I became invisible after 50. Nathan glanced at me, then back to the road. "You're not invisible, Nora." The way he said my name, it made me sit a little straighter. Like I'd forgotten something, and he just reminded me. We drove in silence again, the sound of the rain growing louder on the roof. I thought he'd drop me at the gate, but he turned down the side road that led directly to our house. "You know where we live?" I asked, surprised. "I've dropped Mike off before. After the company baseball game, remember? You weren't home that day." "Oh, right," I said, though I didn't remember. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be feeling. He pulled into the driveway and put the car in park, but didn't shut off the engine. The rain had become a steady curtain, washing the windows in gray streaks. "Thanks for the ride," I said, reaching for the door. But before I could open it, he spoke. "Nora, can I ask you something? And you can tell me to shut up if it's out of line." I paused, hand still on the door handle. Something in his voice made me turn back. "Okay," I said carefully. He looked at me, not in a way that made me feel small or objectified, but like he was actually seeing me, really seeing me. Like a person, like a woman. "Are you happy?" he asked, just like that. I blinked. A strange warmth spread through my chest, followed by a cold wave of guilt. "That's a complicated question." He nodded, eyes still on mine. "Think it's supposed to be." I didn't know what to say. No one ever asked me things like that. They assumed. They guessed. But no one ever really asked. I looked at him and saw something I wasn't ready for. Curiosity, gentleness, maybe even longing. Not lust, not recklessness, just connection. I felt my throat tighten. I should go. Nathan nodded slowly. Of course. But he didn't start the car. He just sat there as I opened the door and stepped out into the rain. I didn't run for cover. I didn't even hurry. I let the water soak through my blouse and hair and down my spine. It felt cold and clean and confusing. Mike was still inside at the party. He wouldn't be home for another hour. And Nathan? He was still sitting in the car when I looked back once, just before stepping inside. That night, as I stood in the kitchen drying my hair with a towel, I realized something strange. I felt awake. I didn't sleep well that night. I lay beside Mike, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, the soft rasp of his snore, just barely audible. It was a sound I'd grown used to over the years, like an old clock ticking in the background. Familiar. Safe. But that night it sounded different, like something distant, like a reminder of how far apart we drifted without ever meaning to. Nathan's question kept echoing in my mind. "Are you happy?" No one had asked me that since. Maybe since my 20s. Back then, the answer was easy. Life was full of movement, full of hope. Raising the kids, building a home, laughing in the kitchen over burned lasagna and mortgage stress. But somewhere along the way, we'd both gone silent in the same room. The next morning, I went about my usual routine. Coffee, laundry, watered the plants by the kitchen window. Mike kissed my cheek on the way out, muttered something about meetings and traffic. I smiled. That mechanical, well-practiced smile. Then the door closed, and I just stood there, still holding the dish towel. A notification buzzed on my phone. "Nathan. Hey, I hope I didn't cross a line yesterday." I stared at the message for a long while. My thumbs hovered over the screen. "Me? No, you didn't. It just caught me off guard." He replied almost immediately. "Nathan, that's fair." It wasn't really a fair question to ask, but I've been thinking about you since the party. The way you looked. The way you looked away. I don't know why I noticed, but I did. I didn't respond right away. I walked around the living room, picked up a stray sock from under the couch, rearranged a picture frame that was already straight. My heart was tapping a little faster than it should have been. Finally, I typed, "Me? You're not wrong. I have been invisible for a long time." He didn't answer for a while. I imagined him reading it slowly, maybe thinking hard about how to reply. When he did, it wasn't what I expected. "Nathan, would you like to get a coffee sometime? Just talk, nothing more." I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd served thousands of meals, where birthday candles were blown out, where bills were paid and arguments whispered. And now, here I was, staring at a message from a man half my age, asking to talk. I didn't say yes, not right away, but I didn't say no either. That Thursday, I told Mike I was running errands. I wore something that hadn't seen daylight in years, a navy blouse that hugged the parts of me I used to love. I took extra care with my makeup, though I told myself it was just out of habit. We met at a small cafe tucked away on a side street I'd almost forgotten existed, the kind with wooden floors and soft jazz and little handwritten menus. Nathan stood when I walked in. He looked freshly showered, his sleeves rolled up, a quiet smile on his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "Neither was I replied, and it was the truth. We sat in a quiet corner, talked about nothing at first, books, weather, traffic. But then the conversation deepened without warning, like stepping from a shallow pool into open sea. He told me about his parents' divorce, about how he watched his mother disappear into the role of ex-wife and never quite return to herself, how she taught him to notice when women get quiet in their own homes. I told him about my kids, how I missed when they were little, how I sometimes resented their freedom, how I loved Mike, but sometimes I wasn't sure I still knew him. The coffee got cold, and yet we stayed. At one point, I reached for my cup, and our fingers brushed. I froze. So did he. That spark, tiny but undeniable, flashed between us. I pulled my hand back. "I'm not looking for anything reckless," I said. He nodded. "Neither am I." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe we could keep whatever this was safe, contained. But something had already shifted. The air between us wasn't innocent anymore. When we finally stood to leave, he touched my elbow gently. "Thank you for saying yes," he said. I drove home with the windows cracked, letting the wind tangle my hair. And as I pulled into the driveway, I caught myself smiling. Not because of what had happened, but because of what might. The days that followed were quiet on the outside, but noisy inside my head. Mike didn't notice anything different. Or if he did, he didn't say a word. We still had dinner at 7, still watched our shows in the evening. But I kept thinking about that moment in the cafe, Nathan's hand brushing mine, the way his eyes stayed with me when he spoke. Not flirtatious, not dramatic, just present. Like he saw me as someone worth listening to. It scared me how much that meant. I tried to shake it off, tried baking, gardening, anything to fill the hours. But late at night, when the house got still, and I sat alone in the den with only the lamp on, I found myself replaying our conversations. Not the words, really. The feeling of them. Like I'd stepped through a door I didn't know was there. The next time Nathan texted me, I didn't hesitate. "Nathan, I found this spot by the lake. Quiet, peaceful. Want to go for a walk?" Me? What time? It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that felt like it could go either way, lazy or heavy. I wore a sweater and jeans, comfortable, not intentional. At least, that's what I told myself. He was already there when I pulled up, leaning against the hood of his car, hands in his pockets. The wind was light, the sky that pale blue-gray that makes everything feel softer. We walked in silence at first. Birds chirped in the distance. Leaves crunched underfoot. The path curved along the edge of the water, and I could smell pine and something sweet in the breeze. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "what your life would look like if you'd made just one different decision?" I looked at him. Which one? Any of them. A missed opportunity. A conversation you never had. I stopped walking. "Why are you asking me this?" He turned to face me. Because I see you thinking about it. Every time we talk. My throat felt tight. Not from anger. From something deeper. A mix of grief and longing. I didn't come here to do anything wrong, I whispered. I don't want to betray anyone. You haven't, he said gently. Not yet. The wind picked up a little. A loose strand of my hair blew across my face, and before I could fix it, he reached out and tucked it behind my ear. It was such a simple gesture. And yet my body responded like it had been waiting to be touched for years. I stepped back. I'm married, I said, almost to remind myself. I know. You're young. I'm not that young, he replied, a sad smile tugging at his lips. And you're not old. You're more alive than anyone I know. I didn't know what to do with that. We sat on a bench overlooking the lake. The sun had started to dip, casting gold over the water. Why me? I finally asked. Nathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because you carry silence like it's something you earned. Because you laugh with your eyes before your mouth. Because the first time I saw you, you looked like you were holding the world together with thread and a tired smile. I closed my eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not in a lifetime. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch again. But something unspoken passed between us on that bench, something irreversible. When I got home that night, Mike was watching a game, a beaver in his hand. He barely glanced up. Hey, babe, everything okay? Yeah, I said quietly. Just needed some fresh air. He nodded, eyes already back on the screen. And I stood there in the doorway for a long time, wondering how love could fade so gently you didn't even realize it was gone. Until someone came along and made you feel it again. The following week felt like standing on the edge of something I couldn't name. I moved through my routines, laundry, phone calls with the kids, cooking dinner, like always. But my mind kept drifting back to that bench by the lake, to the quiet between Nathan and me that had somehow said more than words ever could. We hadn't made plans to see each other again, but I felt him everywhere. In the breeze on my morning walks, in the ache I didn't know I'd been carrying for years. I started noticing things about Mike. The way he chewed his food with his eyes fixed on the TV. The way he never asked how my day had been. And the way I'd stopped expecting him to. It wasn't anger I felt. It was distance. Quiet, polite distance built over time. Layer upon layer of unspoken things. 3 days later, I ran into Nathan at the grocery store. Of all places. I was in the produce aisle, checking a tomato for ripeness, when I heard his voice behind me. Still the best eyes in the room. I turned too quickly, heart pounding like I'd been caught doing something wrong. But he wasn't grinning or teasing. Just watching me gently, waiting. Nathan, I breathed. You scared me. Didn't mean to. He looked down at the basket in his hand. Wasn't sure I'd see you again. I hesitated. I wasn't sure either. There was a pause. The store hummed around us, shopping carts rolling, soft music playing, an old woman asking where the eggs were. He cleared his throat. I think about you. I felt the words like a pressure on my chest. I know this isn't sustainable, I said. This thing between us, it can't go where it wants to go. I know, he said quietly. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real. We stood there for a long moment, neither of us knowing what to do next. Then finally I nodded. Walk me to my car? Outside, the air smelled like rain again. We didn't speak as we walked, just moved together in step, like we always had. At my car, I stopped and turned to him. I can't be someone who lies, Nathan. Not to him, and not to myself. I don't want you to be, he said. But I needed you to know. You woke something in me. Something I didn't know I could feel again. The tears came before I could stop them. Soft, almost apologetic. You did the same for me, I whispered. He stepped forward, and for the first time we embraced. No urgency,